Hi there, welcome. My name is Vince, and I'll be talking today about the MIT Sloan MBA essays for the class of 2015. So, welcome. I assume that if you're going to watch this video right now, um, taking time out of your busy day, it's because you're trying to enter MIT Sloan to earn your MBA in 2013, graduating in 2015. If that's you, if that's why you're watching, then you're in the right place. I can help. I've been working with clients for 10 years. My results for MIT are quite good. You can find them on my website. And today my purpose is to answer what I think are the questions behind the questions. MIT Sloan, as you know, has simplified their essay requirements this year, following the trend, or following or setting the trend, who knows, but in the same trend as Harvard only has 2 essays. Tuck Cutback now only has 3 essays instead of 4. Stanford cut back as well in terms of the choices, as well as the total number of required essays. All the schools seem to be getting more towards a much more streamlined application. The good news is there are fewer essays to write. The bad news is the essays that you write matter more than ever. So there's just as much pressure perhaps in the essay writing process. My job as a counselor and coach and advisor to admissions, to folks who are trying to get into these top programs, my main goal is to try to lower that pressure by giving you the best analysis that I can possibly give. There is no shortage on the web, as you well know, of free advice about these essays. And so I try to make these videos a little bit different, in that I just try to present my own personal perspective on it, and also giving you my sense of who your audience is and who's actually going to be reading your essays. In the case of MIT, that's pretty easy for me to do because I've met Rod Garcia, had a meeting in his office face-to-face set up thanks to my former student. My client got me this meeting with Rod. I'm a member of AGOC. I think that helped as well. I was happy to talk with him. I enjoyed, I did a campus visit, sat in on classes, met my clients and some other students, got to see the new building. This was the same time that I visited HBS, which was May of 2011. And since then, I don't know if this is the reason why, but as a disclaimer perhaps, I'm a sponsor of the Japan Club, the MIT Sloan Japan Club. I donate money because they ask me to, and I try to help their activities because I like to do so. My former students ask me, and I say yes. Maybe that's why, or maybe for some other reason. But anyway, I got to have breakfast more recently this past spring with Dean David Schmidtland, the Dean of MIT Sloan School of Management, which includes the 2-year MBA program. This is Rod Garcia's boss. He's also the head. He also supervises or oversees and raises money for Sloan Fellows, the new executive MBA that they've started, and the Masters in Finance program, and as well as LGO and the HKS joint degree. Anyway, very enlightening to sit down in a small table in a not one-to-one, but a small group breakfast. I was the only non-Japanese guy in the room, and I'm also the only non-MIT grad in the room. So I was very honored to be there, and it was very illuminating to listen to what the dean had to say about the school's vision. So I understand the audience for your essays. The dean doesn't read your essays, but Rod and his team certainly do. I've met them. I know the school well. I've seen year after year who they admit and who they don't admit. And with lots of the admitted students, I stay in touch, visit them on campus, and follow up and see how they're doing in general. So it's fun to do that. It also gives me, I think, a pretty good insight and clear perspective on the school's culture. And that's knowledge that you absolutely can use when you're applying to the school. So let's talk in this first video just about essay 1. I'm gonna do a different thing this time, different than I did for my Harvard or Stanford or Columbia videos where I talked about everything in one big video. I'm gonna make a series of smaller videos just to mix it up and keep it interesting. There's some stuff you can find on my website. This is a summary of Rod Garcia's admissions criteria. This comes from an article which I've cited here. This is a Business Week article from 2005. So it's a 7-year-old article, but it doesn't matter. Rod's been there for 17 years as the admissions director for MIT, so things don't change much. He's got the same criteria. The essay questions may change year after year, but he's looking for the same stuff. So take a look at my website. It's this post here, MIT question behind the questions, and I've cited that article that I found that was very helpful to get a very clear sense of what Rod is looking for. He tells you straightforward in a really clear way. That's another thing I really like about this school is that this is sometimes challenging for you, the essay writer, but they're really demanding, or they're really precise in what they ask for. They know exactly what they want. They specify the time frame for your essay, which now Stanford has copied. They ask the question in a particular way. They tell you to describe what you thought, what you felt, what you said, what you did. They don't want you to write about lessons you learned. They don't want abstraction. They want really concrete detail. They just want you to tell them a story, a behavioral story, if you will, and they just want to know how you act. And I will briefly show what Rod said about that. Oops, I did something fancy here with my website. Let me go forward. Back to where I was. Back to Rod's quote. Pardon the delay. Website's been slow lately. I think it's just getting a lot of traffic or something. Oh, here it is. Okay. So Rod looks for demonstrated success, and that's quantifiable. Past work achievements, your grades, your scores, that's all data, basically, including what's in the resume. Then he looks for all the softer stuff, and that's what's qualitative, how and why. That's all in the essays. And back down here about the behavioral question, as he says, and Rod Garcia and MIT didn't invent behavioral questions or behavioral interviewing. It's an old practice. They're just the first business school that I ever noticed that used them as the essay question format and as the interview question format. And they've set a trend because lots of schools, including Stanford, have followed them in this regard. The underlying principle here is that past behaviors are good indicators of the future. So they don't want you to make a hypothesis or a guess or a theory about the future. They'll interpret the past on the future. They don't want you to do that, basically. They want you to talk about what really happened, what you thought, what you felt, what you said, and what you did. And then they'll interpret what it should mean in terms of the future being 2 years at MIT as a member of the graduating class of 2015, hopefully, and in the future in your career. The last thing he says is these personal attributes are things people rarely change through education. It's like you are who you are when you show up at MIT. There's lots of things you're going to change and learn and grow, all kinds of hard skills and soft skills, but personal attributes, according to Rod's hypothesis and the whole premise of behavioral questions, is that this stuff is it's kind of ingrained. This is your set behavior. You don't really change that much. In terms of who you are and how you really operate at a base level. And I would argue that's pretty accurate, in my view as well. Yeah. So, here we go. Essay question 1. Please describe a time when you had to convince a person or a group of your idea. I think there's 2 ways to answer this question. There's 2 parts to the question. And coincidentally or conveniently, those 2 parts of the question perfectly fit MIT's motto of mind and hand, mens et manus. My Latin isn't wonderful, but it's mind and hand. So you had to convince a person or group of your idea. So your idea is your mind, the idea that you had, and then how you convince someone. That's your hands, I guess, your action. Thought, felt, said, and did. So what steps you took to persuade other people to accept your idea. The question behind the question here, the questions behind the questions, he's asking, can you change other people? Changing others is a key part of leadership, I think. Most of us would want to follow people who can get things done. There's 2 ways to answer this question. One is to emphasize the idea that you had, and the other, I think the more common way, is to emphasize the method that you took to convince the other people. So it's either you're emphasizing your brilliant mind or your agile hands, but not just hands, voice and mind and heart. Thought, felt, said, did. I think it's, in most cases, the essays that I read from my clients who are admitted to the school very much are emphasizing the process of convincing someone of their idea. Hang on just a second. It's the fall and I've lost my voice, so I'm trying to keep it going through this video. So my assumptions about leaders in the view of MIT, and not just MIT, I think leaders are people who can conceive and implement great ideas. I think leaders are people who influence others, the decisions that others make. Leaders also are able to demonstrate innovation and creativity. Those are some of the soft skills that Rod Garcia and his team are looking for through the essays. Also, there's some amount of speed. Let's assume that the idea that you had, the idea itself wasn't brilliant. It was the implementation of the idea, or the execution of the idea, or the persuasion or the influence of others that was the star of your story. If that's the case, I think there are three sort of ways to tell the story, and any one of these would be fine, and I'm sure someone could argue with me that there's 3 or 4 more, and I'm sure you're right. These aren't the only 3, these are just the 3 most common. Normally when I read someone's first essay draft for MIT Essay 1, my main critique is usually the comment that I find myself writing or saying more often than not is, show me the turning point. The turning point is that moment, like in a Hollywood movie, where all the negative momentum turns into positive momentum. In the case of your story, where you actually were able to convince the person or group of your idea, right? You told your supervisor or the marketing team or the sales team or the whoever it was, the deciders, the people in the power, people with the power to make the decision, right? Because if you're totally in charge, if you're a one-man business like I am, you don't have a committee, you just do what you want. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but you do what you want to do. You don't have to convince anybody, maybe your clients, that it's a good idea, ultimately the market, but you're making your own decisions as a solopreneur or entrepreneur. Most of you don't have that situation. Most of you are working in organizations. You have to get funding, you have to get approval. There's various layers of decision making. So the turning point is that moment when whoever it is who has the power to say yes finally says yes, where they said no the first time and no the second time and no the third time. The essays that I read are often, the first drafts are really boring because it's just a bunch of actions, and I could guess the actions. There aren't that many actions you could take. We had a meeting. I did some research. I called the committee. I made a PowerPoint. Whatever you did, the action steps aren't particularly interesting. What's really interesting is the thought, felt, said, did, and also the reactions of others. So show me a story with a character in it. And show me that character, just like, again, like a Hollywood movie, show me that character gradually agreeing with your idea, finally having that breakthrough moment of saying, aha, I get it, okay, go for it. And there's 3 different ways I think you can show that breakthrough, that turning point. The first one is, it's just green eggs and ham. If you've read this book, I read it to my son every chance I get. I love this book. I think it's hilarious and fun. Dr. Seuss, who, by the way, went to Dartmouth, not that that matters. I found that out when I went to Dartmouth. The same trip I went to MIT and Harvard and saw my clients up at Tuck. So Dr. Seuss, if you haven't read Green Eggs and Ham, I feel sorry for you. Go out and read it. It'll take you 1.5 minutes to read. You'll like it. Or if it's been a while, you don't have a kid like me and you don't need to read this for his reading skill, I'll give you a quick synopsis. It's a simple story of persistence, right? This little guy, Sam, who's not in the picture here, has to convince this nameless dude with the funny hat to try this crazy green eggs and ham. Now, the idea itself isn't the star of the story. Green eggs and ham is actually kind of a strange idea. Not sure I'd want to eat old, eggs and meat that weren't natural color. Green isn't always a good thing. So, for good reason, the guy kind of says no. And good old little Sam I Am just is the most persistent, lovable little dude in the world, and just through 20 different crazy ways persuades this older guy, or looks older anyway, this bigger guy, to try his famous green eggs and ham. Simple persistence. Finally, it works. The turning point is cute and fun. I've already probably violated 7 copyright laws by putting this cute book title on my cover on my much respect and credit to the estate of Theodore Geisel. He's doing okay, I think, with all those movies. He doesn't need my money. Anyway, let me close this blind because the sun just came out. This is a really casual video. Thanks for sticking with me. So, number one, the way to do this turning point thing is persistence. That's one way. Another way, I don't have a cute children's story to illustrate it, and I couldn't really think of a great example, but I don't think I need one. I think you'll get this one too. Is just simple analysis. This is like the McKinsey method. I came up with a brilliant hypothesis. It's a more scientific method. I analyzed the situation. I made a hypothesis. I gathered all the right data. I made a sexy PowerPoint. And they just had to agree with me because it was just such an overwhelming... I just flooded them with analysis and data, and it was just so clear and convincing that they finally said, okay, fine, we agree with my idea, whatever my idea was. Green Eggs and Ham would be a lot less interesting book if it was about McKinsey Consulting, and it wasn't just simple old, plain old persistence, which is easier for kids to understand. But if persistence wasn't your way, or if it was a combination of persistence and analysis and hypothesis and data, fine. But again, that's the turning point. You got to tell us that. The reason the essays in their first drafts aren't really good is because you just because you're worried about the word limit, the 500 word thing, you just kind of skip it. You say, I introduced my new idea, green eggs and ham. Everybody in the room said, I don't know, green eggs, ham, somebody's vegan. Nobody wants to eat green food unless it's St. Patrick's Day. Sorry for that American reference. Right? And then I tried, and then I did a bunch of analysis and concluded that green eggs and ham is more nutritious and whatever. I showed the final one is influence, right? My board or my decision maker, my supervisor, whoever it is, the committee with the budget, my sales team, my marketing group, my colleagues, I just influenced them with positive peer pressure. So the persistence thing didn't work. The analysis didn't work. You know what worked? Peer pressure. So my supervisor wasn't going to listen to me. I'm 27 years old or whatever. I'm just the, youngest person in the group, whatever. I'm just a kid with an idea or whatever, a mid-20-year-old, not a manager with an idea. But I figured out who he respected, who he respects, and I talked to that person. So it was like I triangulated, right? I went lateral. Somebody his same age or somebody her same title, or even somebody outside the company. Or I showed that the competitors are doing it, peer pressure, friendly competition. Somehow I brought in outside influence, and either one of these three, all three of these, demonstrate the core leadership skill that MIT is looking for in this essay. And this is the how. This is the qualitative. The achievement, the idea, the profit, the sales growth, whatever that is, the data, that's in the resume, or that's in the recommendation letter, right? This is the story of how. This is the persuasive story about you being able to influence other people, and this is what they want. So I'm going to sign this thing off. Less than 20 minutes, the shortest video I've ever made. Woohoo! And that's only one essay. I'll be back. I'll be doing all the other essays, essay 2, the supplemental information, not an essay, but very important. And finally, last but not least, the cover letter, which is the first thing they list, but it should be the last thing that you do, and I'll talk about that in a separate video. All right, that's all for now. Signing off. Thanks again for your time and attention. Good luck with MIT.